Welcome back to the next part of the dashboard build, and in this tutorial we're going to learn how to set up our Kanban Task Board. Now before I get into this, I should follow up that on our previous video I've made a slight mistake that I didn't realize until I was testing a few things out on the live website. So I wanted to rectify that before I moved on to the Kanban task build. So the issue was, now, whilst in the configurator, I was clicking on the project brief, the proposal, and contract. It was initiating the download for us, but on the live side, that wasn't the case. It just navigated to that URL instead of, instead of downloading the file. But the same went for the invoices as well. These are all clickable. Of course, these are all link blocks that's meant to start downloading the file instead of, navigating to the URL. Same goes for the files as well. Thankfully, that issue has now been resolved. So let me just quickly show you what the adjustment that I've made on Wized side of things. So over here on action, I have the set proposal URL. I'm just going to show the proposal URL because the same setting applies for invoices and the files as well. So what I've done is, of course, previously we had the ref attribute and the download attribute added in to the link blocks, but in the download attribute, I had the file URL instead of the file name, which was something that I actually didn't know. So that's my bad, but now it has been rectified. So if I were to click on project brief now, it takes a bit of time, not sure why, but yeah, now it initiates the download for us, so which is great. The same goes for invoices as well. So if I were to click on this, I'm not sure how long we'd have to wait. All right, there we go. Okay, so yeah, same for our files as well. Perfect. So yeah, it's working and it's been fixed. Also, another thing is that I also had to add a custom bit of JavaScript to the body. So if I head into our dashboard here, okay, so this bit of JavaScript has been added. So essentially, it grabs it and it makes sure that it only it asks you to download the file and not navigating to the URL. And the only thing that you need to keep in mind is, of course, you can see the selectors here, which is selected by Wized attributes. So you just need to apply your Wized attributes here to the selectors, and for the rest of the code, you can just leave it as is. Yeah, so that's that for the custom code and the second part of the dashboard. Now we can move on to our Kanban Task Board. Okay. All right, so let's see what like the last video, I've already set everything up, but I've already set everything up on Wized, but I'll be walking you through the entire setup anyway. So let's see what we're going to be covering. So we're going to learn how to create a new task, and then post that task. We have all our assignees listed here. Actually, let's create a task. Create sample task. This is a test description. Let's assign this to Noah. Let's use our date picker here. Create ticket. Perfect. So if we close this, there we go. There's our sample ticket right there. Now, if I were to click on this, you'll notice that it populates all the input fields with our ticket details, which is really neat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to add comments as well. This is super neat. All right, so when we click on submit, there we go. It's been added now. Then we're going to learn how to drag and drop our tickets across the board. So let's set up an analytics to doing here. Yeah. let's try refreshing this page and make sure that these two tickets actually stay where they are, just to make sure that the request actually been executed properly. And there you go. Design homepage and 404 is in here. Setup analytics is here. Yeah. So these are working as expected. Okay, now that the demo is out of the way, let's quickly jump into our Webflow to see what the structure looks like here. There's nothing here for me to show you because these are quite straightforward. If you were to just go through this, you would understand how the build has been done. We have our sample dummy cards here. Of course, you would need to put that so that we can render our list and everything. But that's that for the build itself. Let me just quickly open up the modals. So we have two modals. We have the create task modal. So we have the create task modal here. However, I do want to point out that in the create task modal, the input, the select field for the assignees it's an embed. Because we're using custom code, if I jump back into the client portal and show you this, so the way this is populated with the collaborators, it doesn't work with the native Webflow select field. It has to be custom coded for some reason. So yeah, that's that for the input fields here. If I jump back into Webflow, yeah, it's just the assignee input field. The select field. I keep calling it an input field. Is basically an embed. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close this and open up the edit task pop-up wrapper. So this is for editing our task, of course. Same story here with this assignee as well. And that's that for the walking through the structure inside of Webflow. Pretty straightforward stuff happening here. So I'm just going to leave it here and head into the page custom code settings. Now I'm going to walk through the actual custom code later on in the video, but let me start off with the inside head tag and show you the latest additions. So we have our no index, no follow tag here. I've added in our pick a day CSS. Now this is the CSS file for our date picker. And then we have the one from our Tippy library. Then we have which one is this for? So this is for our project switcher. So we've addressed this before, and then we have the styling for our Tippy and other additional, so adjusting the borders of these elements here, this link block. And then finally we have sortable drag, sortable ghost, sortable chosen, and is moving. So this bit is a main point of interest here. Now, we're using a custom JavaScript library for our Kanban task, which is called sortable.js. And sortable.js comes in with these CSS options here. Actually, it's quite a long list of stuff that you can do with the CSS, but I'm just using their default examples that I've found on their documentation, and I'm going to link this on the description below. So yeah, this is, of course, in the event that, it's all explained here. So these are the classes that you would be using from the CSS to adjust the look of what it should be like when your card is being moved, if the card is being moved from the original position, when it's being dragged, vice versa. So yeah, you can follow the example that I have here. All right, and then let's move on. Then we have the styling here for our date picker. This is quite self-explanatory, so I'm just going to leave this as is. All right, and then moving on, we have our before body tag codes here, and the first one is the link to our JavaScript file from our code sandbox dashboard. Now, you will find now here's the thing. I am going to include all my code sandbox link in the clonable. However, I strongly advise that you replace all the code sandbox links with your own links, because I am going to be making adjustments to my code and it will end up breaking features on your clonable. So yeah, you might want to get them swapped out. And if you head over to your Notion link here, you'll notice that I have provided the code for 6, 7, and 8 right here. So this is the complete code that you would put in for the inside the head tag and then inside the body tag as well. So like I mentioned, make sure that you replace all the code sandbox links with your links. And I've also provided the code sandbox link over here as the code snippet for those JavaScript files. So we have the dashboard. Now the dashboard link is a massive code right here just for the dashboard. So yeah, that's the code that you need to put into that dashboard JavaScript file. And then we have the tooltip. So this is for our tippy, so it renders all the collaborator names on the tooltip. So that's what this code is for. Again, you need to put this in your code sandbox. And then we have another one for our Kanban cards as well. So when you start moving things around into the all the boards, that's what this functionality does. It makes sure that it executes our Wized request when things are moving around. So that's essentially what this code is doing here. I'm not going to go too much into the details, but that's just the summary of it, really. Okay, and then we have the code for our date picker. So again, this needs to go into your sandbox as well. All right, so jumping back, so another thing that you want to keep in mind is that you want to have your code laid out the same way over here. And I mean the positioning. So like with the dashboard code needs to be all the way on the top. And then you have your 2 JavaScript libraries linking to Tippy. So this is coming from Tippy, by the way. So these 2 links over here. And then this one is a code sandbox link right here. So replace this with yours. And then we have the sortable JavaScript library link right here. And then we have our own code sandbox Kanban card link that needs to be replaced. And then we have our pick a day JavaScript file here that needs to be linked as well. And then this is our own code sandbox link. And then with that being said, then we have our file download custom code here that you can just apply. And that's that. That is it for custom code. No more custom code, and I promise. So this is where it all ends. So I'm going to close this. We're going to go in more details for the dashboard custom code right at the end of the video. So now we are going to jump over onto Wized and understand what our setup for the Kanban Task Board looks like. So I'm going to go ahead, reload my page real quick. Okay, and I'm going to switch over to Dreamland because I don't want to... All right, perfect. Okay, so that's done. So now we are going to address all our data in requests. Now, the first on the list is the load current project request. Of course, this request has been built out before, but if I just click on it now, there have been certain modifications done to this. All right, so let's find out what that is. Okay, so it's mainly to the after request. So we had this previously done, load files, but our modification starts from here. So essentially what we're doing is we set variables, and I've created this variable, so you need to create these variables. I'm going to walk you through this and explain why we created these variables and what functionality does each of these variables serve. So we have the variable of collaborator names. So basically this is grabbing the array from our field called collaborator names. So I'm going to keep referring back to our okay, so I'm going to refer back to our Airtable table here to show you. So this is going to paint a clearer picture as to what's happening. Okay, so as you can see that this is basically the array of all the collaborators that we have for this project. So we grab that information and we store that in this variable. And why is it that we store it in this variable? So if I take you over here, it's because of this. So when you click on any tickets, see this assignee over here? So basically this populates this list, this select field. So we populate this select field with all the collaborators that we have for this project. And then of course, we also have a separate functionality where it knows which collaborator has this ticket been assigned to. So that's another functionality we'll be covering just in a bit. But that's what this variable is for. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's move on to the next one. We have collaborator record ID. So of course, if I go back to Airtable, this record ID is coming from here. So these are all our collaborators. We need their record ID because over here, these are the names. These are the option names that's coming from our collaborator names. And then inside, the value is set to their Airtable record ID. So when you when you select a different collaborator, what happens is we execute the request of updating the ticket, and then we also make sure that this collaborator's name has the Airtable record ID inside of it, so that it helps us choose the appropriate collaborator. So what I mean by that is if I take you to inspect here. All right. Okay, so notice that this option, we have Noah Smith on the list. So yeah, the name is coming from collaborator names, and the collaborator record ID is coming from here. So it's coming from our variable, and then it's set as the value of that option. So that's what this variable is doing. All right, hopefully that makes sense as well. All right, and then we have a variable called to-do tasks. So this is going to be, so basically this is an array of all the tasks that we have that is marked as for to do. This is also coming from our project. This is a lookup field, of course. So yeah, there we go. This is the list of all the tasks that we have under to do. So we grab that array, and then we populate those. And then, so let me just close this. All right. And then we grab those tickets from that array, and then we populate it over here in this board. We do the same for waiting for info, same for doing, same for QA, and same for done. We grab that array, we rendered that list in their respective boards. And we all do, and all that is possible because of this variable. So that's what the variable is for. So, okay, so we've covered this: waiting for tasks, doing tasks, QA tasks, done tasks, backlog tasks, and then we have collaborator names too, and we also have collaborator record IDs too. It's 2 for both of these because it's for this one over here. So when you create a new ticket, it populates this select field over here. Now, that's that for the variables. Hopefully that makes sense. You'll also notice that I've also created a variable called backlog tasks, but you'll notice that we actually don't have any backlog. We only have to do, waiting for info, doing, QA, and done. And the reason for that is because this is the only bug that I've come across on the dashboard build that I haven't been able to solve yet. So basically, initially we had another board here called backlog tasks, but unfortunately, what happened was our doing task board wasn't actually working. So whenever you drag a ticket into the doing board, it works, but when you try taking the ticket out of the board, it just doesn't work. And I wasn't sure why. All the other boards work. So what I did was I took the backlog tasks and basically turned it into the doing. So essentially, this is actually the backlog task. All the IDs and everything, this is actually the backlog task. I've just changed this text here that says doing, but everything else, the element. So let me just quickly head into Webflow. I think this will probably make it a lot easier to understand. So if I select the Kanban card wrapper here and select this button here, if I take show you the ID here, you'll notice that this has the ID of new ticket backlog because this was originally the backlog board. If I select the selectors here, you'll notice that the Kanban task name is backlog, and then this one has the property of attribute of backlog as well. So these are all backlog, and the actual doing board is actually hidden somewhere over here. There we go. So let me just take off the combo class. So yeah, that's our doing board. For some reason the doing board just doesn't work. So yeah, we have the backlog board that is, disguised as a doing board, is doing our job at the moment. Yeah, but if you can resolve this issue and find out why this is happening, and if you can share that with me, that would be amazing. I'll also show you what the setup looks like at the moment. This might seem a little confusing. So how does things work if it's has labeled as backlog? How are we handling everything? So I'm going to walk you through that setup anyway right now. So for this variable, you'll notice that the backlog task, it's going to a variable called backlog task, but we have the value of the task doing set up here. That's essentially what we're doing. Yeah, and that's that. So I'm not gonna go further into this because I think it might confuse you further. All right, so next in line, we have our load current project. Okay, load invoices, load files, load files. Okay, so then we move on to get task details. All right, so this is quite self-explanatory. So we have a data in request that gets the item from our client portal table agenda, and it uses the record ID of task record ID. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then we have an after request of task name, and then task assignee, and task assigned by, task priority, and then task complete by, task start by, task details. So these are variables. So let me start from the top and actually address this one by one. So what is this variable, and how does this variable know what to get, what value, how are we assigning that value to this task record ID? So a neat feature about this is that, let me open up the page data here, so it just makes a lot more sense. Okay, now I want you to take a look at this task record ID variable here. And once I click on one of the tickets, you'll notice that the task record ID gets populated with the Airtable record ID. So let me click on this. Okay, so see that? So what happened is, as soon as I clicked on the ticket, the task record ID grabbed the Airtable record ID of that specific ticket. And then based on that record ID, we grabbed the task name, the task assignee, task assigned by, priority, complete by, start by, task details. And then we grab those values and populate the input fields. So that's how it's being populated. And that's what this is for. So when I close this, you'll notice that all of those have been cleared off now. So if I click on something else, it loads all the details up and it inserts those details into our respective input fields. So yeah, if you want to, and when you make an adjustment, because we have the task record ID, yeah, that change pushes through to Airtable. So let me go back to our data in request, and that's essentially what task record ID is doing. Okay, so we are going to figure out how exactly it grabs the record ID just in a bit, in case if you're wondering, but it's important to show you that that's what the functionality is right here. And then of course, like I explained, the after request is basically setting the properties, the task name, the task assignee, and everything. And then right at the end, we have another one. We are performing the request of get comments. Again, this is quite self-explanatory. So this is for this over here. So we want to check if when we click on a ticket, if it has comments. If it does, that's great. If it doesn't, that's fine as well. And basically we grab grab the values of those comments, and then we rendered this out on the ticket. So I'm not sure if this ticket has comments. Okay, it does. So yeah, it pulls in those comments of that specific ticket. So that's that for the get task details and get comments. Now let's move on to our data out requests, just to check out what sort of data out requests we have. Okay, so basically it starts all from here. Update agenda ticket 2, post comment, create a task, and update agenda ticket. Now you might be wondering, well, why do we have 2 update agenda tickets, and what's the difference between them? So if we click on update agenda ticket 2, so it's basically so we send this information over onto our Airtable, and the only thing that we're sending is the task type. So this is a separate variable as well. And this request is only executed when you drag and drop the ticket to another board. So when you drag and drop the ticket to another board, everything stays the same except for the task type. So let's say if we were to drag this design homepage and drag it from waiting for info to doing, then obviously we need to update our task type, because now it's a part of doing and not waiting for info. So that's what this is for. So essentially this update agenda ticket 2 is executed when you drag and drop, and the execution itself is not happening from Airtable, from Wized. This is happening from our custom code, and we're going to go through that custom code in a bit. So yeah, so that's what this request is for. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, and then we have our update agenda ticket. So this one is exactly the same as update agenda ticket, but of course there's no dragging. So this is meant for this ticket over here. So when you update your so let's say you start typing in some stuff here, you're editing this ticket details and everything, and when you click out of it, we have a on change action attached to all these input fields and the text fields and select fields, so it immediately updates the ticket. So yeah, so that's why we have all our input fields connected to each of these fields here. So essentially that's what it's doing. And then we have an after request where it loads up current project. Load current project is the one that ends up reloading the entire dashboard. So it reloads the entire dashboard, and you get a clear view of the ticket with your modifications. Awesome. So that's that for update agenda ticket 2 and update agenda ticket. All right, and then we have post comment. I think this is quite self-explanatory. If you just go through the setup here, you will understand what's happening. And then we have a get task details. So basically, let me just explain this a little more. So when you type in your comment and you submit this, so basically it reloads this entire ticket, which is it executes this request here, get task details. So you'll notice that this is a sample comment because we want to refresh this and see our posted comment here. That's essentially what it's doing. Okay, so let me head over to data out and post a comment and then create a task. Let's see what this is. Oh, right. So this is, of course, for creating a task. So if you click on this button here, of course, you just fill this out, click on create ticket, and it just creates your ticket. So again, very, very self-explanatory here. And that is that for our data out. And now we're finally going to move on to actions. Now, the reason why I haven't, of course, set this entire thing up is that this portion of the dashboard is extremely excruciatingly painful. Like the build is just way too long. It's tedious. It's very simple, but again, very long. So I just didn't want to cover these edits over on the video. So I've done it ahead of time. So I'm going to walk you through the key stuff only. All right, so first things first. All right, so we have all these actions here. That's only for the Kanban. So yeah, I haven't put them in the folder yet. So I've just kept them separate for this video only. All right, so we have our first task here, which is create a task, and let's see what's happening here. So we select, so this is for the attribute create task trigger. On click, we run this request. Okay, so this is quite self-explanatory. We know what's happening here. And then we have the action of load tasks for to do. So basically, what's happening here is we grab the array from this variable. We've previously, of course, learned that this array, the information is set by our data in request. So it grabs the array from to do task, and then it renders it out. And then what we do, and this is extremely important, you want to make sure that you set the HTML attribute of Airtable record ID. And then this is coming from our load current project. So this is coming from this field here. It's extremely important that you set the record ID of this. So each and every ticket here has this data attribute. So Airtable record ID. As soon as you click it, that's how we make it possible. So when you click it, we grab the Airtable record ID, and then we get all the information to that specific ticket. And it's made possible because of this. So we do the same for all the other actions as well, like load task for waiting for info, for doing, for QA, for done. And that's that. And then we move on to load to do task name. So this is basically the task name right here that you see, but for to do. And we set that, of course, from our data in request. Then we set up the assignee, which is this one, this text right here. And then we do the same for assigned by, and then we do the same for priority, and then we do the same for complete task by. I'm not going to go through these because these are extremely dead simple. And here comes the tedious part of it. You need to repeat this for all the boards. So you need to do this for to do, waiting for info, and then for doing, and then for QA, and for done. So I'm going to scroll through all this and then move on to here. Then we have our next action, which is the clear task variables. So just to remind myself, so basically what this action does here is, if I click on page data, so I don't know if you remember this, but notice how all these are blank right now, these variables, but if I click on a ticket, all these tickets are filled up. So basically the action so what we do is when we close this, we want this to clear up. So we've attached that action to this close button here. So when you close this, it basically clears all that up. The reason why we clear this up is because we have a lot of custom code, and what was happening was it was creating a bug. So to work around that bug, we set up that action. So that's essentially what's happening here. Okay, so that's what clear task variables does. All right, and then we have the update ticket, and the update ticket is basically when you click on any of the tickets, and all these fields here have a on change request. So if you happen to make any sort of edits and you click out of that field, we're immediately going to execute the update agenda ticket, not number 2, update agenda ticket, because update agenda ticket 2 is only for drag and drop, which is executed by our custom code, not in Wized. So that's what this request is for. Action is for. All right, then we have the set assigned by text. So basically, we always have this text assigned by on page load anyway. So this is automatically done by actions, by our actions. So yeah, I'm not going to cover this. This is self-explanatory here. And then we have set task type for waiting for info, new tickets. Okay. So we set the same action for waiting for info, new tickets, task type for to do, doing, QA, done. So what does that mean? So clicking into it, you'll notice that we have this, basically when you click on this new button here for, let's say, new button for waiting for info, create a new ticket for doing, or create a new ticket for QA, we want to make sure that when it's clicked, we want to set the variable of task type to that respective, to to the value of that clicked button. So what I mean by that, and the reason why we're doing this, is because previously when I clicked on this, it was pre-selecting the done, but it wasn't registering the ticket, the task type in Airtable. So what I did as a workaround is I've attached IDs to these buttons here. So again, this is done via custom code. So when you click here, that custom code selects the pre-selects done over here automatically for you. But what it doesn't do is that it doesn't register that click. It doesn't register that into Airtable. So that's why, as a workaround, we have this action over here. So we set the variable to task type, and then we type in our task type name here. And then we use this to update our tickets or create a new ticket as well. So that's essentially what we're doing. So if I show you the page data here, and we can see this in action, so you can see that task type is done. If I were to click on QA, it changes to QA. If I change to doing, so it grabs it to QA as well. And then if I show you the data out, which is create a task, you'll notice that the task type is coming from the variable instead of input, because the input is very unreliable. So that's why we have the variable here. That's what that's for. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Scrolling down, let's see what we have. Oh. Okay, so we've covered all these. Then we have the create ticket loader. Okay, so that's the loader for this one over here. Oh wait, no, not this one, sorry. It's for the new ticket. So there's a loader in here, so when you submit the ticket, it loads up, so that it shows up, and that's what that's for. Okay, and then we have the load task for backlog. Again, we're doing the same thing for our backlog. We're pretending that we do have a backlog board, but essentially what we're doing is we have the backlog variable, but we're actually, storing, but its value is actually coming from the doing. So we're doing the same thing for task name, backlog assignee, assigned by. It's just for this board here. Sorry, yeah, this board here. These are labeled as backlog items, but actually the actual data is coming from doing. And that's essentially what we're doing here. So, and that's what these actions are for. So I'm just gonna skip through ahead. But if you have any questions, if you need further clarification, please leave your queries on the comments and I'll get back to those. All right, and then we have our set visibility to ticket loader. I don't know which one this belongs to. Let's see. Oh, right. So it's this loader over here. Okay, so yeah, when you click on it, of course, this loader shows up, and then once our content's loaded up, it goes away. So that's what this is for. Set visibility to ticket edit wrapper. Okay, so yeah, this is the wrapper that contains, of course, the content of our ticket. So it only shows up when our request has loaded up. Then we have load comments. These are quite self-explanatory. Set comment text, set commented by name, which is this over here, set commented post date, which is this over here, and then finally we have the post comment. Of course, we set the trigger through our actions here. And that's that for the Wized setup side of things. That brings us to the end of the Wized setup, and now we're finally going to move on to our code sandbox. Yes, this I have been dreading for quite some time, because creating this code was not fun. Again, I'm no coder. This entire thing has been generated by ChatGPT, but yeah, it was a bit of a nightmare. Okay, so I'm going to run through this. So we're going to start off with the dashboard, and I don't remember addressing this, but the reason why this code is this big is because we're constantly interacting with Wized API, and if you're making onload requests, so a lot of onload requests, then you're going to have to put them, sorry, let me rephrase that. If you're going to make onload requests that interacts with Wized API, they all have to be in the same code block. That's why the code is this big, because we do have a lot of requests being done on page load. And basically these are just code snippets from various other functionalities all merged together. So don't get scared by its size. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly go through this and explain to you roughly what's happening. Okay, so we've already covered this on our previous video. So this is for our load files. And then we have the disable the first option in the task type. So basically we have this functionality where if you click on any of the tickets here, you'll notice that our first option is disabled. The same goes for creating a ticket as well. The first option is disabled. So that's what this code is doing here. And then we have function to reset all variables. Okay, so that's for all files. We've covered this on the last video. And then we have this over here selected. Update data. Okay, right. So this is the custom code that updates our task type variable that I've shown you. So that's that over here. And then we have this code here that loads files equals. Okay, so that's coming. That is for our load more files, which we've covered on the last video. And then we have this. Okay, get the button with the ID create task trigger. Okay, so the reason we have this code here is to basically, so this is targeting our create task trigger, which is this one over here. So what was happening is that when you create a new task and you create that ticket, the information that you filled out for this ticket stays on. So to work around that, what we do is when we click create ticket, it immediately resets everything to the way it was before. So essentially that's what this code is doing here. Ooh, okay, so that's what this code is doing here. All right, so let's move on. All right, we have comment submit, task comment. Okay, so we have this code here. So basically what this one does is when you post a new comment, we want this to be cleared out. So let's try that out. Test 2. So as soon as you hit submit, it should clear out and we should be able to see our comment. There we go. Previously, it just stayed on in the text area field. So yeah, it was quite annoying. So that's the fix for this over here. Okay, and then, oh yeah, and then we have our Kanban tasks related tickets. Sorry, not tickets. Yeah, the code for the Kanban tasks. So this monster of a code is all for our Kanban tasks here. So essentially what's happening is that, okay, let me just quickly go through this v collaborator names. So yeah, these are carrying out various functionalities like grab the collaborator names and the collaborator record IDs and then populate the select field. And then, yeah, that's essentially what it's doing. Make sure that the first option in that select field is disabled. So that's what it is doing on all this code here. And then we have our project record ID, which we've covered on a previous video. That's what that code is for. Okay, so what does this do? If a task card was clicked, if a task card load. Okay, so that's the code that loads up our ticket details right here. And then we also use this to grab our variable data as well, variable value. I'm sorry, I know I'm not being super helpful here, but essentially that's what you're seeing here is basically coming from our custom code here. So, you know, like functionality like populating the select field, making sure that when you submit the ticket, the information stays on, and then the information being pulled in from the variables and then sticking on to the input field here, even after the update has been made. So essentially that's what it's doing here. I'm just not going too much into the details. However, that brings me to the next part of the crucial stuff that I need to point out. Throughout this entire ticket, you really don't have to touch anything here, unless you are changing the you're changing the ID of something, you really don't have to touch this code, except of course you're changing the ID, then you would need to modify that here. And of course you would also have to update your variables if you happen to be changing variables. But we do have the request name and the data property of that request. So you would find these requests here. So please do make sure that you go through this several times to see if you need to change that, if you find yourself changing that is. So yeah, you'll notice that we have another data property here that we are trying to grab from Wized. So you will come across that oftentimes. And yeah, that is that for dashboard. I'm not sure what exactly to focus on over here, but I've done this to the best of my ability to explain what it contains. But if you have any question, please feel free to ask. All right, so let's move on to the date picker. So date picker, quite self-explanatory. We are targeting 4 date pickers in total. 2 of them are from our create a new ticket, and the other 2 is from edit an existing ticket. So that's what this date picker is for. Then we have our Kanban cards. Again, this is generated by ChatGPT. It targets all the boards so that it can track, when the card is moving across each and every board. That's when we execute the our Wized data out request, which is the update agenda ticket 2. So it's the Kanban cards JS that is responsible for executing and updating our agenda tickets. And then we also have our moving classes and everything attached to this as well. So yeah, that's the code for Kanban cards. And then we have our tooltip content, which we have previously addressed, and you'll find all these code inside of Notion. So yeah, that is a wrap on the Kanban Task Board. Now we'll need to set up the essential features of the dashboard, like properly gating this page and make sure that only authenticated users get access to this page. Then we will set up our logout. And last but not least, we'll also set up the loader and make sure that the content for the entire content for the dashboard only shows up when our data is fully loaded up. And we'll cover all those in the next tutorial. So I will see you there.